Myself, Tomme, and I'd like to show you a really quick demo of how a DITA CCMS, a components content management system, could be built using Drupal. I'm going to talk a lot about DITA, but actually you could use this to model any kind of XML, I think. It's a little bit rough around the edges, but you have to know that there's no custom code at all that I'm using here. So this is all contributed modules available on Drupal.org. So first I'm going to create a new content type. I'm going to do that new page. I'll show you what I've prepared before. Test, and I'm going to add a few fields. So the interesting part is that I'm going to be adding, I'm going to remove this one. Yep. I'm going to add a new paragraph. Test paragraph. Well, let's call it abstract, for example. And I'm going to use the paragraphs module. Save it. And what this is going to do, once I've saved this, it's going to allow me to define a series of elements that I can add at that place in the document. And that could be any kind of elements. So one of the limitations we had previously with Drupal and this kind of form-based content modeling was that you couldn't just switch elements at a certain place. You had to pick as a very specific order, and you couldn't just change that up. With paragraphs module, like you can do that because what you can do is, for example, add abstract and short. Where is it? Short desk. And when this is generally settings, you can even set how many elements of those types you can add. You can save. And now when you go and create content, for example, test, and it asks you, so what do you want to add? Do you want to add a short desk or an abstract? Yes, for example, I want to add an abstract, and then you get that element. Now, a cool thing is that these elements you can then further define. Let me just show you the structure. You can define what's available in those elements. So for example, the abstract elements, you can go and manage the fields. And this one doesn't have any fields yet, so I can just say this has the abstract field. This is kind of boring because it just has one field, and it should be long text. Okay, and I'm going to use text area. Good, save it. Oh, abstract content. Okay. Save field settings, and here I can define that it should use filter text, and CK editor will be available, and that's interesting I'll show you why in a moment. Okay, so now when we go back, reload the content creation form, and I add an abstract, add a paragraph. Now I get a text field. We added the fields to paragraph panel. Okay. Now the next module I want to show you is the asset module. And the asset module is, let me show you. It's in configurator here. We have free HTML and image. One other limitation that we had in Drupal before was that you either had to choose fields and go for boring, strictly text fields, or you had to work with some sort of filter, like an HTML filter, to add a highlighted text or bold text or underlined text. The big limitation there was that, WYSIWYG is a mess. But with the asset module, you can define different asset types that then get added into the content. So, and I'm going to show you this on the task content type. That's actually the nicest. I prepared this really complex task content type. Let me show you first the structure. So the way it looks, content types, tasks, manage fields. So what I've done is I've added, so there's a title, there's the alternative titles. Then in the task content model you have to choose, you can choose between a short description or an abstract. And I've done that using paragraphs. You can add a prologue. Now prologue has there's a whole bunch of things you can dump into a prologue. And I've added paragraph field for that so that you can add different types of pieces that you can add into a prologue. Then comes a task body, and then there's like a fixed order of these elements. So there's a fixed order of these fields. But then, for example, the steps elements, there's paragraphs again, because you can choose between different types of steps. And then when you go, and I'll show you when you go into that. Steps is using these types of steps, steps unordered, and steps informal. Now when you go to the, let me show you the paragraph bundles. The steps data type, you have the note, command, step content, and step result. And step contents again is another paragraph. So it's again, if you go, it allows you again to have different types of content in there. So basically, paragraphs allows you to have an unlimited series of nested structured field content that has an arbitrary content model that you can define. So you can really fix the structure but allow for a lot of flexibility. So you can have this flexible data model thing that previously you weren't able to do in Drupal. So how does a task look like? Now all of this looks fairly primitive, but with a little bit of theming you could make this look a lot better. So you could say test, an alternative title, I'm not going to add that here now. We can add an abstract, and then we get this WYSIWYG field. Now the really cool thing is that the asset model can be used to use different types of assets, like a picture, or you could define like an asset that has a picture and a few fields, or only fields, or a bunch of other things. And those are reusable, which basically means that with assets, you're not only adding the ability to add structured content, like because when you drag this into the WYSIWYG editor, it's going to use this pre-formatted model. It's with I can edit it. So with the title, the image field, and whatever other fields that you've defined, and it's going to structure. It's going to paste that into your WYSIWYG field in that format. Now I've enabled these other things like bold and italic and whatever. You could remove those so that an author would only be able to use those elements, like only to use assets, for example. So it's really, really powerful. Prologue. Here you could like add an audience paragraph, then add an author paragraph, and then maybe even, well, you wouldn't add multiple audience paragraphs, but here this is more interesting. So the steps. So you can add a step or a step section. So let's say step section, then add a step, and so on and so on. So you could really, with the commands, step content. So it really like sub steps, choices paragraph. You can really build this whole model out, and this interface could use a little bit of love to make it look nicer, but everything is there, and that's what I'm so utterly excited about and what I wanted to share, and that's it. Thank you.